The galaxy had been on fire for decades, a blaze of rival empires clawing at each other across the stars, but Earth had refused to step into the inferno. While alien fleets smashed themselves to pieces in distant sectors, humanity stood apart, a small blue world wrapped in silence and suspicion. The decision was not born of cowardice but of caution. Every nation on Earth remembered centuries of their own wars, how each one left scars deeper than victory could justify. When the first envoys from the great powers arrived, demanding allegiance to one side or the other, Earth's response had been the same: neutrality. Colonel David Rourke delivered that word with a voice that never wavered. Tall, broad-shouldered, and grizzled by campaigns no alien had ever studied, he was the man chosen to speak for Earth's Defense Command. His presence alone conveyed resolve. The envoys, draped in their scaled armor and jeweled robes, expected hesitation or fear. Instead, they found a soldier who looked them in the eye and told them humanity would not bleed for their wars. Beside him, though less imposing, stood Dr. Marcus Hale, the quiet architect of Earth's true strength. Where Rourke offered firmness, Marcus offered calculation. He was the mind that had spent years weaving invisible defenses into Earth's orbit, rings of railguns hidden in the shadows of satellites, stealth systems that masked entire fleets, energy grids that could bend plasma fire into nothingness. Few outside the Command Council even suspected the scale of his work. Marcus spoke rarely, and when he did, his words were precise. To the envoys, he was simply a scientist with no voice in war. To Earth, he was the shield behind every refusal. The third man at the council table carried a different fire. Captain Elias Grant represented Earth's fleet, and though his discipline kept his voice measured, his eyes betrayed the soldier eager for a fight. He had drilled squadrons of pilots who had never seen real combat, only simulations against theoretical alien tactics. Yet Elias had faith in them and in the brutal clarity of human ingenuity. He did not question neutrality in public, but every fiber of him longed for the moment when someone dared to test it. When the latest delegation arrived, a group of insectoid negotiators buzzing in metallic tones, Rourke repeated the same line: Earth would not take sides. The insects hissed threats about embargoes, about how neutrality would be interpreted as hostility by both warring coalitions. Rourke remained unmoved. He leaned forward, eyes like iron, and said, "We will not fight in your wars. This world has seen what endless conflict becomes. We will not be another pawn." The chamber fell silent. Even Elias, restless as ever, held his tongue at the conviction in the colonel's tone. When the aliens departed, Marcus turned to Rourke with a faint smile. "They think we are naive." His voice was soft, but in the stillness of the chamber it carried like a blade being drawn. "They think we're weak," Elias muttered, his fists tight against the table. "They'll find out otherwise," Rourke replied. Beneath the calm words lay the central tension that bound them. Earth did not seek war, yet every man in that chamber knew the storm was inevitable. Neutrality was not a shield but a dare, and eventually one of the galactic powers would call the bluff. The question was not if, but when. As weeks passed, pressure mounted. Alien broadcasts filled human channels. Propaganda insisting neutrality was a betrayal of peace, a refusal to aid civilization against barbarism. Some human factions argued that joining might bring technology or favor, but the Defense Council remained steadfast. The world had united under one principle: no more foreign wars. Instead, industry churned quietly, satellites multiplied, and shipyards birthed vessels whose designs were never shared. Marcus oversaw it all, a conductor guiding an orchestra no one else could hear. Late one night, as Earth rotated into the shadow of its moon, the three men stood together in the observation deck of Orbital Command. Below them, the planet glowed with the calm indifference of a world that wanted nothing to do with interstellar slaughter. Elias pressed his palm to the glass, his reflection sharp in the starlight. "They'll come," he said quietly. "One side or the other. They'll decide our silence is defiance." "That's what we're preparing for," Marcus replied. His tone was not fearful, only certain, as though he were reciting a formula. Rourke's gaze never left the curve of Earth below. Neutrality is our choice. But if they force our hand, he paused, and for the first time there was a glint of anticipation in his voice. If they force our hand, we'll remind them what humanity learned from centuries of war. We don't need empires or crusades to know how to fight. The words hung in the air, heavy and unspoken with all their implications. Marcus folded his hands behind his back, silent as ever, his mind already calculating probabilities. Elias smiled faintly, the kind of smile that promised retribution. And Rourke, standing between them, radiated the steady conviction of a man who had chosen peace, but was ready to wage war if someone dared to strip that choice away. Far beyond the orbiting station, fleets of alien ships clashed across stars humanity had never seen. None of those commanders knew that one world, quiet and defiant, was watching. They did not yet realize how dangerous silence could be. They had mistaken refusal for weakness. They would not make that mistake for long. And somewhere, in the void between stars, the wrong enemy was already considering its first move. The Varuun Dominion had never known hesitation. For centuries their fleets had carved through weaker civilizations, burning resistance to ash and leaving monuments of submission in every conquered system. They thrived on intimidation, and when they encountered a world that dared to deny them tribute or allegiance, the response was always the same: eradication followed by conquest. So when their scouts reported on Earth, a planet rich with oceans, fertile lands, and mineral-laden moons, they expected little more than a token struggle. A species that chose neutrality in a galaxy at war was, in their eyes, a species too timid to survive. Commander Threck stood at the prow of his flagship, scales glistening under the glow of starlight filtered through the observation dome. He was massive, his armor etched with the scars of victories that filled entire archives. The Dominion's War Council had ordered him to bring Earth into compliance, and he relished the chance. To him, Earth was not an opportunity for negotiation, but a lesson to all who watched. Strike the silent, punish the defiant, and every neutral world would fall in line. On Earth, the warnings arrived as faint tremors of activity at the edge of the solar system. Marcus Hale was the first to spot the anomaly, patterns in the data streams that didn't align with natural celestial movement. He stood in the command chamber, eyes narrowed on the cascade of readings. "They're probing us," he murmured. Small craft, cloaked but clumsy. Elias Grant leaned over his shoulder, his jaw tight, testing the fences. His hand hovered near the console as though itching for the order to strike. If they think they're unseen, they'll only grow bolder. David Rourke entered moments later, his uniform immaculate despite the long hours he'd endured. "Report." Marcus explained with the patience of a teacher correcting a stubborn pupil, his words clipped yet precise. "The Varuun are gathering data. They believe our defenses are weaker than they appear." "They'll learn otherwise soon enough," Elias growled. Rourke studied the projection of incoming paths, scouts dipping at the edges of orbit, never breaching, never committing. His expression darkened. This was inevitable. They've chosen us as their example. Days later, inevitability became reality. A raiding party of Varuun frigates tore from the black, descending upon Titan Station, an orbital colony that housed miners, engineers, and their families. The assault was merciless. Plasma fire ripped through habitation rings, scattering civilians into the void. Alarms screamed across Earth's networks as images of destruction flooded screens. The Dominion hadn't come to negotiate. They had come to kill. Elias sat rigid in his command chair as reports crackled through the fleet channel. Civilians down. Hundreds, maybe thousands. The bastards didn't even demand surrender. His voice carried both fury and restraint, the sharp edge of a blade still in its sheath. Marcus worked feverishly, feeding coordinates into defense arrays. Their arrogance blinds them. They're not expecting counterfire from this distance. If we engage now, we can cripple them before they realize the scope of our systems. Rourke's silence was heavier than shouting. The weight of decision pressed against him. Neutrality had defined their stance, but neutrality ended the moment innocent lives were torn apart. He turned at last, his voice low yet unyielding. We respond. The order was given. From the shadow of Earth's orbit, massive railguns awoke, hurling projectiles at velocities that shredded Varuun shielding like brittle glass. Stealth drones, long hidden among civilian satellites, activated in coordinated bursts, ambushing frigates with precision strikes that left debris fields glowing against the darkness. For the first time in generations, the Dominion's war machine encountered prey that fought back with teeth sharper than their own. Elias's fleet launched in disciplined formations, each movement rehearsed 1,000 times in simulation. Pilots who had never seen real combat moved with the cohesion of veterans, their ships darting like shards of steel through the chaos. Elias's voice cut through the comms with steady authority. No quarter for those who slaughter civilians. Make every strike count. Marcus watched from the command chamber, his hands weaving through data streams as he overloaded Varuun targeting systems. Ships fired blindly into nothingness, their sensors deceived by false echoes. They see ghosts, he said, almost to himself, as lines of alien code unraveled under his control. The battle was swift, brutal, and decisive. By the time the Varuun attempted to retreat, half their raiding party had been reduced to wreckage. The survivors limped into the void, carrying with them the first tales of human defiance. Yet the victory brought no celebration. The images of Titan Station's destruction played endlessly across Earth's networks, fueling outrage and grief. In the aftermath, Rourke addressed the Defense Council. His tone was grave, his words deliberate. We sought peace. We chose neutrality. But the Varuun have made their intentions clear. They think us weak, a world too cautious to fight back. They were wrong. Elias, standing at his side, allowed no softness in his voice. Then we stop waiting for them to test us again. We take the fight to them. Marcus interjected with measured calm, though his eyes were sharper than ever. We must be precise. Every move will be broadcast across the galaxy. If we overreach, they'll see us as another empire. If we falter, they'll see us as prey. Our strength must speak for itself. Clean, decisive, undeniable. Rourke listened, his gaze steady on the men before him. Elias embodied the fury of a soldier who had lost too many civilians. Marcus represented the cold clarity of a strategist who saw the board in its entirety. Together, they formed the blade and the mind. His role was to wield both without hesitation. He rose, his decision already made. Prepare the fleet. Send word to the shipyards. Humanity did not ask for this war, but we will not run from it. They picked the wrong enemy. Across the stars, the Varuun Dominion reeled from their unexpected losses. Yet Threx, proud and relentless, saw only insult where others saw warning. His talons scratched against the command rail of his flagship as he swore vengeance. Earth had bloodied his warriors, humiliated his name. He would not retreat. He would descend with fire, and this time he would not leave survivors. The storm was no longer distant. It was coming, drawn by arrogance and fueled by wrath. And Earth, no longer silent, was ready to answer. The days following Titan Station's destruction were unlike any Earth had known in generations. Factories that once built civilian transports retooled overnight to forge warships. Laboratories shifted from peaceful research to the refinement of weapons designed only as deterrents. Nations that had once guarded their sovereignty merged their resources under a single banner, Earth Defense Command. For the first time in human history, every border, every ideology, every quarrel dissolved before a shared truth. If they did not stand together, they would fall apart. Colonel David Rourke moved among the command halls with the gravity of a man who had carried the weight of war before. His voice did not need to rise above the clamor of officers and technicians. People simply fell silent when he entered. He watched the mobilization unfold with grim satisfaction. Neutrality had ended the moment the Varuun struck civilians. Now, his task was not to seek vengeance, but to ensure survival through strength undeniable. Captain Elias Grant finally had the war he had been preparing for. Though no human had fought an interstellar battle before, his fleet drilled as if born to it. Pilots flew endless simulations, practicing maneuvers against the data of Varuun tactics captured from the raiding party. In the hangars, crews painted their ships not with symbols of glory, but with the names of the fallen from Titan Station, a reminder that every launch was not for conquest but for justice. Elias moved among them with steady authority, his presence both mentor and commander. The fire in him no longer smoldered, it burned with purpose. Dr. Marcus Hale directed the unseen war. While others built ships and armed cannons, he orchestrated the invisible architecture that would decide battles before they began. His algorithms learned from every skirmish, dissecting the Varuun's targeting systems, their communication relays, even the frequencies of their shield harmonics. To Marcus, war was not chaos but calculation. He understood that humanity's strength lay not in numbers. Earth's fleet was small compared to the Dominion's armadas, but in precision, misdirection, and ruthless efficiency. When the Varuun returned, they came in force. Dozens of warships descended on the solar system, their formation a wall of steel and fury. Commander Threx stood at the center of it, convinced that overwhelming might would crush Earth's insolence. He imagined humanity begging for mercy once their defenses were stripped bare. He had no concept of a storm he was flying into. The first engagement began near Jupiter's orbit. Human vessels emerged from behind the planet's shadow, sleek and sharp, their movements orchestrated by Elias with surgical precision. Varuun scanners struggled against the interference Marcus had seeded into the field, false echoes, phantom ships, and sudden blind spots. The Dominion's vessels fired into illusions, wasting barrages of plasma on nothing but void. Then the real attack came. Railguns launched slugs at velocities that pierced through Varuun armor, each impact detonating with catastrophic force. Swarms of drones, no larger than meteors, slipped past shields and embedded themselves into hulls, releasing bursts of electromagnetic disruption that silenced engines and weapons alike. Elias's pilots struck with relentless discipline, never chasing glory, always striking where the enemy was weakest. Rourke watched from orbital command as the feed displayed enemy ships crumbling under coordinated fire. He gave no cheers, offered no words of triumph. He only repeated the same order, calm and steady. Press the advantage. Make it decisive. He knew victory would mean little if the Varuun thought this was luck. They had to understand it was inevitability. Threx, aboard his flagship, roared with fury as his fleet faltered. He had expected fear, not ferocity. He drove his ships forward, attempting to smash through with brute strength, but found himself ensnared in traps laid hours before. Marcus had predicted every angle of approach, scattering mines disguised as debris, seeding false gravitational readings to misdirect navigation systems. The Dominion fought not just Earth's fleet, but Earth's mind. The turning point came when Elias personally led a wing through the heart of the enemy formation. His voice was steady on the comms, every command sharp and confident. His ships weaved through plasma fire, tearing apart the command vessels that held the Varuun line together. The battle unfolded not as a clash of equals, but as a demonstration, humans wielding fewer ships, fewer weapons, yet dismantling a force that had conquered countless systems. By the time the Varuun retreated, their losses were staggering. Half their fleet lay in ruins, another quarter disabled and drifting. The survivors fled with desperation, broadcasting fractured signals of disbelief. For the first time in living memory, the Dominion had been humiliated, and by a species they had dismissed as irrelevant. In the aftermath, Earth did not celebrate. Instead, Rourke ordered that the wreckage of Varuun ships be collected, not for trophies, but for study. He appeared before the Defense Council with a message not of triumph, but of warning. This battle is not the end. It is only the first. They will come again, and in greater numbers. Our survival depends on showing the galaxy that Earth is not prey. We do not seek your wars, but if war comes to us, we will end it. Marcus stood at his side, silent but vigilant, already analyzing data for the next engagement. Elias lingered behind them, fire still in his eyes, ready for the day the Dominion dared to return. The galaxy was watching. Rumors spread like wildfire. stories of a world that had stood alone against the Varuun and broken them. Some whispered of Earth as a hidden superpower, others as a dangerous anomaly. Yet one truth echoed through every channel. Humanity had refused the conflict, but when forced to fight, they had answered with a fury the stars would not forget. And somewhere, beyond the reach of their censors, Threx nursed his wounds and sharpened his rage. He had not been defeated in his own mind, only delayed. He vowed that Earth would not stand a second time. The storm he carried had not been spent. It was gathering, and its full force was yet to come. The wreckage of the Varuun fleet drifted silently in the void, twisted hulls tumbling end over end as though the stars themselves had rejected them. Across Earth, the victory was met not with jubilation but with a quiet, determined resolve. Humanity had drawn blood, but in doing so, it had announced itself to the galaxy. Neutrality was no longer a shield, it was a memory. Every decision from this point forward would define how the universe saw them. Colonel David Rourke sat at the council table, his broad frame unmoving as reports poured in. Casualty numbers from Titan Station, recovery efforts for the orbital colonies, intercepted transmissions from Dominion survivors, all weighed on him like stones. He did not savor victory. To him, this was not conquest but necessity. His mind already turned toward the inevitable response. The Dominion would not let such humiliation rest. They would come again, larger, angrier, determined to erase the insult. His duty was not only to prepare Earth for that storm, but to ensure the galaxy understood what would happen if it came. Captain Elias Grant entered the chamber, still carrying the scent of battle. His uniform bore the scuffs and scars of combat, a living reminder of the fleet's ferocity. Yet his eyes shone not with triumph, but with the restless fire of a man unwilling to wait for the enemy to make the next move. "We broke them," he said, his voice carrying both pride and urgency. "Now we must press the advantage. Strike their shipyards before they rebuild. Show the galaxy that Earth doesn't just defend, it dominates." Across the table, Dr. Marcus Hale lifted his gaze from streams of code projected before him. His calm presence contrasted Elias's restless energy. "No," he said, voice precise, steady, and unyielding. "If we push beyond our borders, we become exactly what they are. Another empire clawing for territory, another predator cloaked in justification. Humanity's strength is not in expansion but in restraint. Every eye in this galaxy is watching us. We must show them that our power is measured, not reckless." Elias bristled, his fists tightening. Restraint won't stop them from coming back. It won't stop others from trying the same. Fear will. We've shown we can fight. Now we show we can destroy. Rourke's silence stretched like a drawn blade. He understood both men. Elias embodied the fury of the soldier, the instinct to strike until the enemy could never rise again. Marcus embodied the clarity of reason, the reminder that war without purpose consumed itself. Rourke knew his choice would shape more than the coming months. It would shape humanity's place among the stars. At last he spoke, his tone measured, carrying the weight of command. "We will not become conquerors. We will not scorch worlds to prove we can. That path leads only to the same endless war that devours them all. But we will not cower either. If they come, we will end them decisively. That is our message." His decision carried. Elias lowered his eyes, unwilling but obedient, while Marcus gave a faint nod, as though the numbers in his mind had aligned at last. The following day, Rourke's words were broadcast beyond Earth. Not a plea, not a declaration of war, but a statement carved in iron. The message was simple and unambiguous. Humanity would not join the conflicts of empires. Humanity sought no dominion, no conquest, no place in their endless crusades. But any who dared to bring war to Earth would face annihilation. "We will not fight your wars," Rourke declared before the Galactic Council's listening ears. "But if you bring war to our world, we will end it." The broadcast spread faster than fire in a dry forest. Across distant sectors, species paused their own battles to listen. Some scoffed, dismissing humans as arrogant primitives. Others whispered with unease, recalling how the Dominion's fleet had been shattered. Rumors grew, exaggerated by fear and fascination. They said Earth had weapons that bent physics itself, that human soldiers fought like demons, that their fleets had torn apart the Dominion with only a fraction of their strength revealed. Truth blurred into legend, and legend became warning. On his flagship, Commander Threxethid, his talons gouged grooves into steel as he replayed the footage of his shattered fleet. To him, retreat was not survival but humiliation. He swore vengeance with every breath, promising the Dominion that he would erase Earth and every human upon it. Yet beneath his fury was a new, unfamiliar sensation: hesitation. For the first time, he had tasted defeat not through attrition but through being outmatched. And though his pride forbade him from speaking it aloud, he knew Earth was no ordinary foe. On Earth, preparations did not cease. Shipyards continued to hum, fleets continued to drill, and Marcus's networks expanded their silent web. Elias stood at the head of his pilots, reminding them that victory meant little without readiness. Rourke walked among them all, the steady center of gravity that kept unity intact. When the council chamber emptied one night, Marcus lingered with Rourke. He spoke softly, his words stripped of calculation, almost human in their weariness. "You've made us a target." Rourke's gaze remained fixed on the stars beyond the window. "We were always a target. Now they know what it costs to strike us. And if they decide the cost is worth it?" Marcus asked. Rourke's expression hardened, a soldier carved from iron. "Then they'll learn it was a price they could never afford." In the silence that followed, Earth spun quietly below, blue and unbroken, a fragile world with the heart of a predator. The galaxy might not yet understand the full measure of humanity's resolve, but soon it would. For the Varuun had made a mistake that could never be undone. Earth had refused the war. But when the war was brought to its doorstep, humanity answered. And its answer had changed the balance of the stars forever.